But now let's get into the business of deportation. Tonight, we're not talking about immigration policy. We're talking about immigration as an industry. When you hear about detention beds, ankle monitors, and deportation flights, it's easy to picture a government agency doing a government job. But that's not what's happening. Most of the capacity is brought from private companies under contract. Those companies are publicly traded. They report earnings. They tell investors what they expect to make. Almost everything I'm going to tell you tonight comes from documents that those companies filed themselves. Three things I want you to walk away with: the numbers, so you can quote them without getting fact checked, the names, so this stops being an abstraction, and the pressure points, because several of these have actually moved in the last 12 months. So first, in one word or short phrase, when you hear private prison company, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Just drop it in the chat, don't overthink it, and we'll come back to your answers at the end. So let's talk about what the business actually is. GEO Group, Boca Raton, Florida, trades on the New York Stock Exchange. It's the single largest contractor to ICE. Here are the numbers from GEO's own quarterly report filed in May of this year for the first quarter. I'll also send these numbers out in the email so you don't feel like you have to write them all down. So their revenue was $705.2 million in 3 months, up 17% from the same quarter last year. Their net income, $38.3 million, up 96% from last year. Adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, $131.4 million, up 32%. For the full year of 2026, GEO raised its own guidance to between $2.95 and $3.1 billion in revenue and between $153 and $166 million in net income. Zoli, the founder and chief executive, told investors that 2025 produced new or expanded contracts worth up to $520 million. And that's new annualized revenue. And they called it the largest amount of new business the company has won in a single year in its history. So now the part that people miss. Detention is only one of 4 revenue lines. Line 1 is beds. In 2025, GEO went from roughly 20,000 ICE beds to roughly 26,000. That came from reactivating shuttered facilities, the 1,000-bed Delaney Hall in Newark, the 1,800-bed North Lake in Baldwin, Michigan, the 1,868-bed D. Ray James in Folkston, Georgia, plus the 1,940-bed Adelanto in California. GEO told investors those activations represent about $300 million a year. GEO makes $150 per person per day. Delaney Hall is worth pausing on. A 15-year contract signed in February of 2025. GEO estimates the 15-year value at approximately $1 billion for one facility. The conditions at Delaney Hall, and most likely all GEO facilities, are so deplorable and inhumane that that's where the recent labor and hunger strikes that spread across the country started. While the Delaney Hall strike ended recently due to guard intimidation, segregation, and transfers, reports say that the strikes still continue at other facilities. Line 2 is monitoring. GEO owns BI Incorporated, which runs the Intensive Supervision Appearance Program for ICE. Ankle monitors, wristwatches, and phone check-ins. New 2-year contract effective October 1st of last year. GEO told investors the federal government assigned that contract an estimated value of over $1 billion. Watch the product mix. Participation on GPS ankle bracelets and wrist-worn VeriWatch watches went up from 17,000 in early 2025 to more than 48,000 now. Participants on the SmartLink phone app went the other way from about 159,000 down to 131,000. And GEO's told investors that the shift toward ankle devices is a shift toward higher priced monitoring. Being released from detention does not remove you from the revenue stream. It moves you to a different line. When I've been observing court hearings lately, DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, always opposes allowing people to be released on bond. But they say if the judge does grant bond, they want the right to impose what they call alternatives to detention. That includes ankle monitoring, wrist watches, and phone check-ins, including biometric photo checks. These devices are sometimes so defective that I know of at least one judge in Denver who discounts the numbers DHS gives when they cite a high number of monitoring violations as a reason not to grant bond.
Great.
And line 3 is transportation, expanded ground transportation for ICE, plus a new 5-year contract with the U.S. Marshals covering 26 federal judicial districts across 14 states. About $60 million a year in new revenue. Line 4 is finding people. In December 2025, GEO won a $120 million 2-year ICE contract for what they call skip tracing. Now that sounds like chasing after people who maybe missed a court date or escaped one of the concentration camps. But no, that is address research and commercial data verification, including in-person observation to locate people on the non-detained docket. That means the list they're working from can include people who left the country a long time ago, those who are currently pursuing their case in immigration court and following all of the rules, never missed a court date or an ICE check-in, or people who have already been awarded legal status to be in the U.S. BI collects the monitoring data. ICE owns it under the contract terms and can disclose it without limit. Palantir built the system that fuses ICE data holdings into targeting. Whether the ankle monitor and watch data specifically lands in Palantir's immigration OS is not publicly known, and that's the problem. Because ICE has fought a FOIA lawsuit since April 2022 rather than answer that exact category of questions. Just in case you don't know what FOIA is, it stands for the Freedom of Information Act, which is a 1966 federal law that gives anyone the right to request records from federal executive branch agencies, which must release them unless the material falls into one of 9 specific exemptions like national security, personal privacy, or law enforcement techniques. ICE contracted Palantir to build Immigration OS for $30 million, awarded April 2025 as a no-bid modification to an existing contract. It's built on ICE's Investigative Case Management System, or ICM, which Palantir has been building for DHS since 2014. And the ACL reports the underlying ICM deal has grown past 145 million. They find you, monitor you, detain you, move you. 4 ways to bill the taxpayer for the same person. One more thing from that same filing, because it tells you something about the business. GEO booked a $38.2 million litigation reserve in 2025 for a case called Nuazor versus GEO. The Ninth Circuit ruled that people in ICE detention who work in the so-called voluntary work program are entitled to state minimum wage. GEO has appealed the case to the Supreme Court. This was in Washington. The wage those workers were being paid, which the litigation is about, was $1 a day, which continues outside of the Ninth Circuit. But in June of this year, GEO privately asked, after GEO privately asked them to, ICE changed their national detention standards to remove any reference to payment for working in the facility. The new language says those held in the facility are volunteers and are, quote, not considered facility and or government employees and are not entitled to wages or benefits under applicable wage laws or labor regulations. It's slave labor, so let's call it what it is. And GEO isn't alone. Core Civic is the other giant headquartered in Nashville, and its 2025 was just as good. Revenue of $2.2 billion, up 13%, and net income of $116 million, up about 69%. But the number that tells you what happened is this one. In the first quarter of 2025, federal customers were 49% of Core Civic's revenue. 1 year later, they're 58%. Federal revenue grew by $116 million in a single quarter, and Core Civic's own filing says that came from increased occupancy at ICE facilities and from per diem increases. Back in February 2025, Core Civic CEO told investors he expected Trump's policies to produce, in his words, the most significant growth in our company's history, and he wasn't guessing. So here's what they reopened, with each one brings in once it's full. Dilley in Texas, a family detention center, about 180 million a year. California City, California, with 2,560 beds, about 130 million. Diamondback, Oklahoma, empty since 2010, about 100 million. Leavenworth Canvas, 1,033 beds, about 60 million. And Mason, Tennessee, 600 beds, about $30 million. 5 buildings that were sitting idle, now worth almost $500 million a year combined. Now here's the mechanic I want everybody to understand, because it's the whole game. Core Civic's own announcements state these agreements paid a fixed monthly payment plus an incremental per diem on how many people are held. So the company gets paid whether or not anyone is in the building, and then gets paid more per person on top of that. The building is a subscription, and the people are the product. And then this happened last month. On July 2nd, Core Civic sold 2 of its California detention centers to the federal government for about $1.5 billion, California City and Otay Mesa in San Diego. But listen carefully, because the structure is the point. Core Civic sold the government the buildings, and Core Civic is expected to keep operating both facilities under its existing contracts. They cashed out the real estate and kept the revenue. Otay Mesa sold 6 months after ICE renewed the operations contract on it. So now the names. David Venturella. Since June 1st, 2026, he's the acting director of ICE. His career started in immigration enforcement in 1986, served at the old Immigration and Naturalization Service, and then at ICE under both Bush and Obama. In 2012, he left for GEO Group. He stayed about a decade in roles including Senior Vice President for Business Development, Senior Vice President for Client Relations, and Executive Vice President for Corporate Development. He left GEO in early 2023 and consulted for the company afterward. The Washington Post, reading a consulting contract GEO filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, reported GEO paid him over $6 million. Then he rejoined the government as an ICE advisor in February of 2025. By that summer, he was the number 2 official over the ICE division that manages detention contracts, the division that pays GEO Group. The Post reported that DHS granted him a waiver from the ethics rule that would normally bar a government employee from working on a former employer's contracts. And now he runs the agency. Tom Homan, White House border czar since January 2025, previously the acting director of ICE in the first Trump administration. His February 2025 ethics disclosure shows he was a paid consultant for GEO Group in the 2 years before joining the administration. The filing says GEO paid him more than $5,000. So more than $5,000 is the disclosure threshold. It's a floor, not a total. Ethics rules do not require him to say more. The real number is not public and could be far higher. House Judiciary ranking members Raskin, Crockett, and Jayapal wrote to Homan on August 26th of last year, demanding he rescue or recuse himself from matters affecting GEO. Their letter also states Homan played a key role in hiring Venturella. Senators Peters, Slotkin, and Gallego sent a parallel letter to DHS. Senator Warren sent Venturella his own ethics letter this year. The White House position is that Homan has not been involved in ICE contract decisions since joining the administration. Next, we have Pam Bondi, Attorney General, prior Attorney General. Before confirmation, she was a partner and registered lobbyist at Ballard Partners. Federal lobbying disclosures list GEO Group among her clients, including a 2019 filing. Senate Judiciary Democrats flagged that she did not list Ballard Partners or its clients when disclosing potential conflicts to the committee. Careful with this one. Her GEO lobbying is from the first Trump term. I have not found evidence she has acted on a GEO matter as Attorney General, so argue the pattern, not a crime. Brian Ballard ran Trump's Florida fundraising. He lobbied for GEO in Florida and brought GEO with him when he expanded to federal lobbying after the 2016 election. But now the piece that makes it a door instead of a hallway. The traffic runs both ways. Daniel Ragsdale, ICE Deputy Director, briefly Acting Director in 2017, left for GEO later that year. Matthew Albence led ICE during part of the first Trump administration, joined GEO in 2022, taking over Ventura's client relations role. Daniel Bible, ICE's top career official over immigration detention, left just before the 2024 election for an executive vice president job at GEO. Before he jumped, GEO spent $1,025 flying him out and buying him lunch for what the disclosure called an employment discussion. Julie Myers Wood ran ICE under George W. Bush, joined GEO's board in 2014, and she's still listed as a director in GEO's 2026 proxy statement. Plus Mary Loisel, a former ICE procurement official who joined in 2019, and a former ICE senior executive who joined in 2020. So if somebody tells you government always hires from industry, this is how contracting works everywhere, why is this different? Type your best one sentence answer in the chat. Corrupt? Yep. What else? Oh, we got inhumane, definitely. Because there are specific rules that prevent it in the civil service. Incestuous, I like that one, Linda. Huge conflicts of interest, disintegration, corruption, no bid. The answer is not that it's illegal, because it's not. Waivers were granted, disclosures were filed. The answer is that when the product is human confinement, the ordinary contracting rules are not adequate. A person who spent a decade selling detention beds to ICE is now the person deciding how many detention beds ICE buys and from whom. He does not have to break a law for that to be a corrupt arrangement. Our position should be that it should not be legal, not that a crime occurred. That argument is stronger and it cannot be defeated by a technicality. So now the wider ecosystem. GEO's the anchor, but not the whole thing. Dana's going to talk to us about the ice flight network in just a few minutes. But first, I want to cover some other areas where companies are turning human beings into profit. So let's talk about landlords. There's a whole layer of people making money here who never show up in a nice press release, and they're the most exposed to public pressure because their business depends on their reputation. Start with ours. The Hudson facility is owned by Highlands Right, a Chicago real estate investment trust. Their own SEC filing spells out the lease. GEO pays them $250,000 a month right now, and that goes to $958,000 a month once the facility is operational. That's about $11.5 million a year in rent from one building. Note what that means. The rent nearly quadruples when the beds fill. Here's what makes Highlands a target and not just a footnote. Highlands owns 7 residential properties in the Denver metro. Most of them are held through subsidiaries that don't carry the Highlands name. So if you live in one, you'd have no idea of knowing. Colorado clergy figured this out back in February. On February 16th, immigration rights activists and faith leaders demonstrated outside two Highlands buildings on Champa Street in downtown Denver, the Chamber Lofts and the Berger Brothers Lofts, asking the company to end its relationship with ICE and GEO. So that's a campaign and a named target, a named executive, and an address. And it's something Solidarity Warriors is plugging into. We'll have more details about a protest coming there soon. But now zoom out because Highlands isn't unusual. When ICE went shopping for warehouses to convert into concentration camps, ordinary corporate landlords signed up to sell. Goldman Sachs, Blue Owl Capital, the Carlyle Group, Rockefeller Group, Fundrise, PCCP, Oakmont, Flint Development, Crestlight Capital. These are not prison companies. These are the firms that manage other people's retirement money. Goldman Sachs was the former majority owner of a 470,000 square foot vacant warehouse in Roxbury, New Jersey. ICE bought it in February for $129 million. Blue Owl Capital, which manages over $150 billion, had a 1.3 million square foot former Big Lots distribution center in Tremont, Pennsylvania, sitting empty since 2024. DHS bought it for about $119 million. Rockefeller Group sold a warehouse in Surprise, Arizona for over $70 million. Two things to be fair about because we lose credibility if we skip them. More Perfect Union reported that Roxbury sold at 137% over its assessed value and Tremont at roughly double market value. But CoStar, which is the industry trade press, quoted an analysis saying the Tremont deal actually traded close to the market average for comparable buildings. Assessed value and market value aren't the same, and real estate valuation is genuinely arguable. So if you repeat the markup numbers, just say who reported them. The good news is that local opposition has already forced ICE to pause or cancel at least 13 of these warehouse deals. Next, we have the builders. This is the newest category and probably the most alarming because it's where oversight goes to die. To build Camp East, Montana, the detention camp at Fort Bliss in El Paso, the Army hired a Virginia company called Acquisition Logistics. The initial award was $232 million for 5,000 beds, with a ceiling reported at somewhere between 1.2 and 1.3 billion, depending on which outlet you read. About 600 million had actually been committed by the time it ended. Acquisition Logistics had never built or operated a detention facility. AP reported that the company had no listed experience running a correctional facility and had never won a federal contract worth more than $16 million. Public Citizen went through the record and found the DHS contract was roughly 81 times larger than anything they'd ever managed and 27 times larger than every contract they'd ever won put together. Here's what happened inside that facility. ICE's own detention oversight unit found conditions violated at least 60 federal standards in the camp's first 50 days. Detainees reported physical and sexual abuse, medical neglect, and intimidation to self-deport. People have died there, including Geraldo Campos Lunos, who was 55 years old. The GAO found $18.6 million in waste between August 2025 and March 2026 because the Army and ICE paid for meals they didn't need. So DHS terminated the contract in mid-March 2026 and now follow what the fix was. They gave the work to Amentum, which had been Acquisition Logistics' own subcontractor on the same project. No competition. Amentum got $452 million in March. And then last week, on July 28th, AP reported that ICE is extending Amentum's no-bid contract through September of 2027 at a potential additional $776 million. Total more than $1.2 billion. The response to a failed no-bid contract was another no-bid contract handed to the failed contractor's own subcontractor and then extended without competition again. ICE's notice said the Army's original contract, quote, did not accurately reflect ICE's operational needs. Now the part about how any of this was legal. Much of this ran through a Navy contracting vehicle called WEXMAC, the Worldwide Expeditionary Multiple Award Contract. The Navy set it up in 2021 to support forces on missions in austere and remote locations overseas. Think a hurricane or a refugee crisis abroad, where you need shelter and food fast and you use pre-approved vendors. It exists specifically to skip the normal acquisition process. In July last year, the Navy renamed it WEXMAC 2.2 Titus. Titus stands for Territorial Integrity of the United States, and that's when it became available for domestic use. Watch the ceiling. July 2025, $10 billion. September 2025, $20 billion. January 2026, $65 billion. That's a 550% increase in 6 months. Somewhere between 120 and 140 companies were added to the vendor pool, including GEO Group in February this year and CoreCivic. Because work issued through WEXMAC isn't publicly advertised, neither Congress nor the public can see how contractors get picked, what they're being paid to do, or what standards they're held to. Senators Warren and Shaheen wrote to the Secretary of Defense on March 22nd, demanding the Pentagon end the arrangement. In June, DHS Secretary Mullen was asked about it in a hearing and said, and I'm quoting him, "We're not using it anymore, just so you know." To be clear, about $1 billion actually went through it. $65 billion is the authorization ceiling, not a spend, but that ceiling is the story. Somebody built a $65 billion door that Congress can't see through and then said they'd stopped walking through it. And then there's the shareholders. This is the one almost nobody talks about, and we'll come back to it in the action items at the end. GEO's own 2026 proxy statement lists BlackRock as its largest shareholder at about 15% and Vanguard second at about 10%. Roughly the same picture at CoreCivic. And those firms hold that stock on behalf of ordinary people through index funds and retirement accounts. If you have a 401k in total market index fund, there's a reasonable chance that you own a sliver of this. The money is also going the other way. In the 2024 election cycle, GEO Group, its subsidiaries, its corporate PAC, and the people affiliated with the company put about $3.7 million into federal politics. Almost all of the big money went to super PACs where there are no limits, and many of them don't have to report information. $1 million from GEO to Trump's super PAC. Another million from a subsidiary called GEO Acquisition 2 to the same super PAC. $750,000 to the House Republican super PAC. $500,000 to the Senate Republic one. Separately, GEO gave another $500,000 to the inaugural committee, double what it gave in 2017. And in every cycle since 2016, at least 87% of the money going to federal candidates went to Republicans. So this is how it's a Colorado story. Everything I just described is happening right here in our state. The GEO-run Aurora ICE concentration camp expanded to 1,532 beds and reported to Representative Jason Crow's office that it was nearing capacity. That puts it among the 10 largest immigration concentration camp populations in the country. Local television cameras have not been allowed inside since 2019. Then Hudson. On July 13th this year, GEO announced a 5-year contract to open the Bighorn facility in Hudson, about 30 miles northeast of Denver. It's the shuttered Hudson Correctional Facility, empty since 2014, roughly 1,188 to 1,200 beds. The Colorado Sun reported the contract value at $528 million. GEO told investors it expects about $85 million in the first full year. The lease terms are the detail to say out loud. Securities filings show GEO pays the landlord $250,000 a month starting August 1st, rising to nearly $1 million a month within 6 months or as soon as the facility is occupied. The rent goes up when the beds are filled. Together with Aurora, that takes Colorado from about 1,500 beds to more than 2,700. Senator Hickenlooper's office documented that ICE issued a letter contract dated December 1st of last year, worth over $39 million for 6 months of services at Hudson, with all terms and pricing redacted, and that ICE withheld more than 100 pages of documents justifying a sole source award without full and open competition. Andrea Loya of Casa de Paz, whose office sits across the street from the Aurora facility, has made the access argument plainly. Hudson is farther out. The nearest fire station is 2 miles. Nearest hospital, 12 miles away in Brighton. No comparable public transit. That's a longer trip for every attorney, every family member, and every visitor. And in Boulder, BI Incorporated, the GEO subsidiary running the ankle monitoring and other monitoring programs, is headquartered on Gun Barrel Avenue in Boulder. That billion-dollar ISAP contract is administered from our state. But I want to end this portion on 4 pressure points, all with results in the last 12 months. Financing. Last week, Citizens Bank announced it will cut ties with GEO Group and Core Civic. Citizens had provided more than $2.5 billion in financing and had been moving in the opposite direction from the rest of the industry. The DICE Citizens Bank Coalition, which says it represents over 175 groups in 16 states, ran a sustained campaign. Jersey City pulled over $200 million in municipal funds. Montclair voted to divest. The bank denies that activist pressure drove the decision, but the coalition is counting it, and so should we. The coalition immediately raised the right follow-up question. When did the existing credit facilities actually wind down? A commitment is not a wind down. Then there's pensions. CalPERS and CalSTRS have divested. New York State's pension plan and the Philadelphia Board of Pensions have divested. The American Bar Association runs a project asking members to file records requests with the local public pension funds to find out whether those funds hold GEO and Core Civic. Vendors. Avelo Airlines left the business after public pressure. Local land use. On July 22nd of this year, a faith group and a Weld County resident sued the town of Hudson in Weld County District Court, arguing that the property is not zoned for a detention center and that town officials ignored their own land use code by letting GEO open without a special permit. That fight is live right now, just 40 minutes from Denver. And now, where your own money goes. There's a boycott list circulating run by a group called Beyond the Ballot under the name Not With My Dollars, Ice Out of My Wallet. I'm going to send you the full list with the reasons and alternatives in the follow-up email, and I want to flag two things honestly before I do. First, the strength of the entries varies a lot. Some are documented federal contracts you can look up on USA Spending. Others are broader political objections that are legitimate but are not ICE contracts. So know which one you're citing. Second, I did find an error on their own page. Their Motorola entries tells people not to buy Motorola phones. Motorola split into two separate companies in 2011. Motorola Solutions is the surveillance and radio company with the ICE relationship, but Motorola branded phones come from Motorola Mobility, which Lenovo owns. So boycotting the phone does not touch the company they're targeting. If we circulate the list, make sure that line is corrected because getting a detail wrong lets people dismiss the whole thing. The strongest target of all is not even on their list. It's your retirement account. BlackRock and Vanguard are the two largest owners of both GEO and Core Civic, and they're consumer-facing financial companies you can actually leave. There's a campaign for exactly this at dropvanguard.org. So here are 3 actions you can take. Pick one and stick to it, or go for them all. Action 1, check what you own and move it. This is the highest leverage thing on this list because it's where the money actually is. 2 different checks here, and they do different jobs. First, check what you own. Look at your retirement and brokerage accounts and search the fund holdings for GEO and CXW. Those are the ticker symbols for GEO Group and Core Civic. If you find them, you're a part owner of these companies. Move to a fund that screens them out and tell your provider in writing why you moved. Second, check who manages it. BlackRock and Vanguard are the 2 largest shareholders of both companies. GEO's own filing with the SEC lists BlackRock at about 15% and Vanguard at about 10%. If your money sits with either of them, you're not just exposed, you're part of the block they vote, and that's leverage you can use. Ask them in writing to exclude private prisons and tell them you'll move if they don't. And one clarification so nobody wastes an afternoon. You can't buy Vanguard stock. Vanguard's owned by its own funds. BlackRock does trade publicly under BLK, and it's in most total market index funds, so you may own a piece of the asset manager as well as a piece of the prisons. If you're a Colorado public employee or retiree, ask PARA in writing whether it holds GEO or Core Civic. Members and residents are the strongest requesters, and the American Bar Association has template language for that request. The campaign is at dropvanguard.org, and their pledge is written for organizations as much as individuals. I want us to look at whether that applies to this organization, and I'll bring it to the board. That's the information you want to send to them. So sign the pledge at dropvanguard.org if your household or organization can commit to it. Action 2, show up in Hudson. The zoning lawsuit is active, and the Hudson Town Board and Weld County Commission meetings are public. Turnout at small town land use meetings is unusually high leverage because it's cheap for us and can show them how serious we are. Dana will give you more information about this. If you can drive 40 minutes on a weeknight, this is the one. And action 3, phone calls about oversight. Call Senator Bennett, Hickenlooper, and Representative Crow. One call each, 90 seconds. The ask is specific. Support congressional and state inspectors' access to the Aurora and Bighorn facilities and demand the unredacted Hudson sole source justification that ICE has withheld. Hickenlooper's office already sent a letter on this in February, and constituent volume is what turns a letter into a hearing. In June, Colorado passed House Bill 26-1276, which requires state health inspections of the Aurora facility at least every 3 months for food, water, and medical safety. It makes GEO pay for those inspections and allows a $50,000 penalty if GEO denies inspectors access. GEO immediately sued in federal court within days of the governor signing it, arguing that only the federal government can regulate immigration detention and that the law unconstitutionally singled out one facility. The judge heard arguments on GEO's request to block the law in late July, and it's still pending. All right, so let me take a look at the chat from the beginning of the meeting. I see things like poor conditions, repulsive, gulag, big money, greed, horrible. A lot of people said GEO, cruelty, slavery, and profit. So I would bet that most people didn't write ankle monitor or airline or landlord. Nobody wrote my 401k. That's the gap this industry lives in. It is not hiding. GEO publishes all of it. They tell shareholders how many ankle monitors they expect to sell and what a filled bed is worth per month. The information is public because the profit is legal. What is not settled is whether it stays that way. Citizens Bank was a decades-long relationship until about a week ago. Avelo was in this business until January. Neither changed because somebody wrote a good argument. They changed because a lot of people showed up and protested for a long time. So now I want to introduce Dana from the Denver Immigrant Partnership Team to give us lots more information.
Hi, everybody. Wow. Tiffany, that's some serious information you just imparted. I learned so much, and a lot of it was kind of, I didn't even really understand because I'm not really financially wise, but thank you. Thanks for all that information. So let's just start what's happening right now as we speak, as Tiffany mentioned, what's going on in Hudson. So it's one of the town council meetings tonight, and there were a couple of things going on there. Together Colorado and David Seligman, who you might remember, those of you who live in Colorado, was one of the folks that ran for Attorney General. His legal firm called Towards Justice and a person that lives near the Hudson facility have filed a lawsuit, like Tiffany said. And so they are talking about that tonight, and there will be more public comment at the town council meeting. I'm pretty sure you can go online to the Hudson website and find out how you can watch via Zoom if you want to watch that tonight. It's usually pretty lively. So Hudson, I'm hoping, and I'm sure with all of you, that this lawsuit will throw enough sand in the gears at this point that that maybe Hudson won't open as a GEO detention center. That's our dearest hope. They keep talking about the fact that it was supposed to open August 1st, and it doesn't appear that the GEO has opened it on August 1st. So everything is still, as it has been for a long period of time, very confusing, complicated, and unclear. That seems to be quite a bit about how the Hudson deal is working. There are also maybe some other lawsuits that are going to show up about the Hudson and a deal, and there are lots of people who are doing canvassing in Hudson to talk to people who live there to see how they're feeling about the opening of this detention center. One of the things that we have been making sure that people in Hudson know is that a lot of the small town municipality people say that they want these detention centers because they are an economic boon. It is not an economic boon. And I think at some point I might be able to find the document that I can put in the chat that talks about all the reasons why a prison near a small town is not an economic boon. So we're trying to get a lot of information about that out into the community. We still don't really know about how the general community is feeling about the detention center. A lot of people are say that they're for it and they want it to happen. And then there's a lot of people that aren't speaking about it at this point. We haven't really talked to them that much. And also people are changing their mind all the time about it. So it's in flux. And I'm happy to, at the end of this, answer any other questions about Hudson. Oh, I might want to mention what happened in Walsenburg last night. So, the prison in Walsenburg has been talked about reopening. That one is owned by CoreCivic. But ICE and CoreCivic have not announced that it was going to officially open. But these protesters in Walsenburg for the last year have been showing up everywhere to make sure that this doesn't happen. And so they came up with a ballot initiative saying that the town is against the opening of the detention center. And last night at their meeting, they decided the town council said that they're going to wait and have the ballot initiative be on the ballot in November and let the people who live there decide whether this should happen. We're a little concerned about that because who knows what's going to happen between now and November. A detention center could get up and running before November even gets here. So, there you go. But God bless the lovely people in Walsenburg who've just been showing up like mad fighting this thing. I'd like to talk a little bit about ICE Air, and because there's a whole lot you all can help us with on this one. So I might have talked about this a couple weeks ago, but Channel 9, Chris Hansen from Channel 9 here in Denver got together with a multi-state investigative team, and they came up with a 50-minute documentary called ICE Air Inside the Secret Deportation Network, something like that. And you can watch that anytime on YouTube. It highlights a lot of what's going on in Denver. And it is an amazing expose on the whole transportation. What are we doing when we're flying people all over the country? What's going on there? And just exposing what that's all about, because we have this feeling that people are learning more about the horrors of being detained by ICE at the airport, which we know is happening now across the country, in the street, at people's homes, all that. And then we also have been learning more about how horrible the detention centers are, the concentration camps are. And I did want to mention that at Delaney, I think there was a death there, either today or yesterday. I think I saw. So this documentary is hopefully a way to raise awareness about what this whole deportation network, how it works in terms of the airlines. So we have been, now there's this amazing nationwide coalition. It was a lot of the people that worked on the Avello campaign to get Avello to drop ICE Air. A lot of those people worked really hard for about a year across the country. And so a bunch of them are now on this, they've kind of morphed into this other coalition called the End ICE Flights Coalition. And really, really interesting people involved in this who are able to track airplanes all over the country when they're taking off, when they're landing, if they've gone somewhere and then they've turned around, or if they've been diverted, or who's not. It's amazing the stuff that's being that they're keeping track of. So just to let you know, here in Denver, this changes, but usually every week in Denver, 3 different airlines fly in and of the ICE charters and then take detainees out. And that's Global X, Air Wisconsin, which was used to be, you may be familiar with the name Air Wisconsin. It was actually bought by the CSI Aviation, who's the broker for ICE Air. And then Key Lime Air, which is the Centennial-based airline that also is contracted by CU to carry its basketball teams. We've been fighting CU for about a year and a half now. But so we, the people across the country, all these volunteers, it's just amazing. They go to the airports, they find places to watch the airplanes come in and pull up to wherever they're going to pull up. They watch whoever is getting off or who's getting on. They're shackled. They're trying to count. They're trying to keep track of actually what's happening in all these cities. And I'll tell you the one on Sundays that come in and out of Denver. Key Lime flies in usually from Fort Hood. The plane is empty. It lands, and a bus from the GEO Detention Center is already there with shackled passengers in the bus. So the airplane lands empty. After about an hour or so, people get off the bus and get onto the airplane. And then that airplane has traditionally been going to Mesa, Arizona. A lot of that is changing right now because there's been surges all across the country. And so the amount of flights are increasing. And I don't know all the details about pricing, like Tiffany, about how much money is being made off of all this, but it's a boatload, as you can well imagine. There's also a group of people who have been working on the actual deportation flights. So shuffle flights are the flights that go, like, for example, let's just say, for example, you get picked up in Denver. You go to the ICE field office to get processed. Maybe they take you straight to Denver Airport. And then these ICE flights that will go all over the country for no apparent reason. I mean, they go like, oh, okay, so I think we're going to go to Buffalo, and then we're going to go to Tampa, and then the airplane's going to go here. And so the detainees have no idea where they are, where they're going. The families can't find them. and their lawyer, the legal help can't find them. And so it's ridiculous. And so when a lot of these shuffle flights, and this can go on for a week or two of them just going from all over, when they end up in places like Alexandria, Louisiana, that's usually when they do the third country deportation flights. Those are the ones that go to Mexico or Guatemala, but they're also going to places like the Sudan, the Congo. They're going all over the world. And there's a woman named Gillian Brockel, who is a Washington Post reporter and an ex-flight attendant, who, if you're really interested in this stuff, just Google her, Gillian Brockel. And she knows a whole lot about, like, for example, one of these flights might end up in a place in Africa called Eswatini or something. And the US has contracted with people there, and those people get reincarcerated in those other countries. Or they disappear. Yeah. So let's see, where was I going with that? So I have to thank Tiffany. Solidarity Warriors helped us put up the billboards that she mentioned earlier, and maybe somebody can put up a picture. Tiffany, can you put up a picture what that billboard looked like? These are digital billboards that we're showing for like the last week or so. And the message is a message that we would like to start getting out and using these particular words to do so. The message was it's either ICE traffics or ICE transports shackled humans out of DIA. That's what we want people to see, hear, understand. And in that billboard, there was an endiceflights.com. If you go to endiceflights.com, don't put a www in front of it. I don't know why, but endiceflights.com, you can click a button and a letter will go to 40 executives of corporations all over the country that are involved in ICE air. So the corporate leaders of like Key Lime and Omni and Global X, and also places like Signature Aviation, which is the building out at DIA that services ICE charters. They don't go into the main terminal out at the airport. There's a separate terminal called Signature Aviation. So this particular letter is going to them, and it's going to all sorts of different people across the country. So that would be really helpful if people could do that. Just go to endiceflights.com. And I think we have at least 10,000 of those letters that have gone out already. Yeah. Another thing. And Tiffany, please just tell me if I'm out of time or whatever, just holler at me.
You're good.
Okay. So a couple of us went out to the airport about a month ago to see if we could film and take pictures of especially Key Lime. We wanted to take a picture of the airplane after it had landed. We wanted to take pictures of the bus that had come from, we assume had come from GEO detention, and the people getting off and getting on to the airplane. And for those of you that don't know, people are shackled. They have a waist iron on, their hands are shackled, and their feet are shackled as well. So these people, big issue, you can very difficult to evacuate an airplane full of shackled passengers. Shackled passengers can't get their oxygen masks. Shackled passengers can't get life vests if they need to get to their life vests. Really super dangerous. So we're trying to get film of this. Well, we went to Signature Aviation to take the pictures, and which is the private company, and then we came back a week later and immediately got kicked out. So the police were there right away, which was not surprising. But this particular airplane or this particular airport, there's really no way for us as activists to go out there and film. Some of the other airports across the country, people are getting really easy footage because they're able to just like go up to a fence or something. It depends on the airports. They're really different. But in Denver, we can't get a line of sight. So what we're thinking right now is we're assuming that that Denver has a boatload of security cameras out at the airport. I mean, I bet there's hundreds of them. And I'm trying to meet next week with one of the city council people to ask them, are there already cameras that Denver is running that is monitoring what's going on at Signature Aviation? If there already are cameras, can we get access to that footage? Can we Cora it, or which is like a FOIA, but a Colorado version of FOIA? Or can we share that footage? Because in King County in Washington, they actually partnered with an airport and they got cameras put in so that the activists could watch. So I hope, who knows, that we will be able to be successful. And other activists are doing this now across the country. They're trying to get to their airports to see if the cameras can be put in. If Denver doesn't have a camera that's already looking at what's happening at Signature Aviation, can they put one in? So that's kind of where we're trying to figure that out. Denver City Council's actually been really great. If you've been following it all, they've taken some stances on key lime that have been pretty provocative. So I think they'll be able to help us as much as they possibly can. Yeah, I think that's it about ICER and what's going on here.
What do you got, Aaron?
I got two things, but Dana, what do you think we should be focusing on this week?
It would be really great if you could go. There's two things which would take a nanosecond. Go to endflights.com, endiceflights.com, and fill out that thing. Send it to all the people across the country who are engaged in this. Also, I got something to ask y'all. So CU has a new athletic director. His name is Fernando Lovo, something like that. And we have gotten a hold of him and asked for a meeting with him because we don't know how much he knows about the key lime, and we don't know how much he knows about his basketball and women's and men's basketball team that are being transported around on airplanes that potentially could have had a shackled passenger in them the day before. So we're asking people to email him and say just that. Do you know that it's possible that your teams could be on airplanes that basically somebody soiled themselves the day before because they're not allowed to go to the bathroom? I mean, this is how graphic I think we have to be. Let's see. I think it's Fernando.Loro.
Got it pulled up. I'm just trying to copy
Yeah,
it so I can
yeah,
paste it.
thank you. Yeah, it's on there. It's on their website. Those two things would be really helpful. An email to the Fundador Laura would be really helpful. And if you go to endiceflights.com, just those two things would be really, really helpful.
Okay.
And
And
Aaron's in Oklahoma, but CU is one of the schools here, if you didn't already know that.
I know I was looking into tuition 25 years ago, and I know. See, so the other thing I wanted to bring to your attention was I don't know if you guys know who Ephraim Diveroli is, but
I don't.
you might have seen the movie War Dogs with Jonah
No,
Hill.
no.
Okay, so it was a movie a couple years ago. It was about in 2011. Ephraim Diveroli and this other guy were running arms to Afghanistan for the U.S. government. They were counterfeiting Chinese ammunition as Albanian. They got arrested. He served 4 years. Anyway, this guy, Ephraim, is now a new landlord in Oklahoma and 5 different cities, 2 dozen apartment complexes. So, like, I love, Tiffany, how you're connecting BlackRock and all these landlords to this thing. This is a something we're going to have to find out more about, but we have obvious corruption, like, and the fact that this guy only got 4 years for what is basically treason is amazing. But this is what we're dealing with, and everything: deportations, landlords, um, local police. Everything is connected. So we're in a united front right now against everything. Thank you, Dana, so much for this. This was really, really good.
Oh, thank you.
And I saw a question in the chat about how to learn more. So I'm gonna drop a document in the chat in just a second that has a ton of sources and also the list of companies you can boycott. And then I'll send that in the email later in a few days as well.
There are a couple more things that just to keep your eyes and ears open for. So Tiffany talked about BI, the company, the GEO run company that's in Boulder. I don't know if y'all saw, there was a big article saying that BI might get a whole bunch of new business because of the ICE is thinking of taking all the Haitians, the like 350,000 Haitians that now no longer have TPS, and instead of putting them in detention centers, that they're thinking of putting ankle monitors on them and keeping track of them that way. So we are planning, we don't have a date yet, but we're hoping to do another protest in Boulder about BI and especially about this Haitian situation.
Great, let us know when we'll get our people there.
Great. And we want to do something out at the airport at some point. Because they're actually doing them all over the country, and they're getting some good press and they're getting some good coverage. We just have to figure out a place to do it where people can park and where we can actually, just logistically, we're going to have to figure out. And what we'd like to do is have that message that I talked about earlier be part of this protest. This ICE traffics shackled humans out of DIA. Boom.
Dana, are you part of Free
Yeah.
Families? I'm sorry, Tiffany.
I don't know anything about Free Families. What's
Okay,
that?
I'm gonna send you on a text. I'm gonna send you a PM or a private message of my email. Free Families is a group from the Cairo Center that goes to Dilley, Delaney, every detention center around the country, and we sing to the detainees inside. We get their A numbers, we go visit them, etc.,
Wow.
etc.
Awesome.
So we actually 2 of our members have been banned from Dilley, in Texas, because they created a song that was on the No Kings event. I don't know if you guys watched the No Kings event, the last one. It was a sing along, and the guys that led that, they're no longer allowed to go to the detention centers. They've banned them. but they created these songs with the kids in the detention centers. So I'm going to send you a private message. Actually, I'll just put it on here. Anybody that, if you guys have ever heard of Singing Resistance, I know one of our
Yeah.
friends, Zoomies, and Dallas is part of or knows the girls in the Fort Worth Singing Resistance. So I'll put that down there. But this is something that everybody can do. And every night at 7 o'clock, we sing a song, and I'll put the lyrics in the chat.
Thanks,
That's
Aaron.
wonderful. It's wonderful.
I know Jeffrey's been waiting to ask a question. Demetrios has his hand up, but he asked, how do I read up on these important issues some more? Where can we get more information?
Yeah. Hi. I also want to ask, are there any politicians in Colorado that are Democrat that will fight against ICE? Or is that just too much to ask?
Yeah, so our Attorney General, who just won the primary to be our governor, which because we're a blue state should be a shoo-in. He has filed at least 24 different lawsuits against the Trump administration, and he is opposed to what ICE is doing. So he's a good person. I know Hickenlooper is not always the best, but it sounds like he has sent a letter regarding some of what ICE is doing. So we can keep putting pressure on Hickenlooper, Bennett, Jason Crow, who's the House representative for the district where GEO is located, has been awesome. So he's definitely fighting.
And Jason Crow is a Democrat?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Next question. You answered this a little bit, but it says, does the Key Lime air flights use which airport? DIA, Centennial, or both?
Oh, great question. So Key Lime as a company is based at the Centennial Airport. Okay. That's where their headquarters are. That's where they do, their servicing. That's where they keep a bunch of their airplanes. But they don't fly detainees out of Centennial. They fly detainees out of the Denver airport and then the other airports across the country. But no, they are not flying any detainees out of Centennial.
Okay. Does anyone know if ICE is flying undocumented out of closed military bases? I live by one, and different planes I've never seen are flying out.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know that Key Lime has just applied for an exemption to fly into an airport in Lake City, Florida, which is not a regular commercial airport that you have to have certain certifications to fly in and out of. Whether that's a military operation out of there, I don't know, but it's some. I guess I'm not answering that question very well. I guess I don't know.
Okay. Let's see. Please repeat the ICE traffics ... We have a protest tomorrow at Salt Lake City International, and she wants to use the wording.
Well, Tiffany can put the picture up again, which would be helpful. And we can either use the term ICE traffics or ICE transports, shackled humans out of DIA. I think that's the simplest way to express the message.
Yeah, the billboard company was a pain in the ass and wouldn't let us use the word traffic.
That was weird, wasn't it, Tiffany? That was weird.
It was their justification was exactly the reason we want to use the word traffic, because they said, oh, it sounds like human trafficking. Mm-hmm. We're like, exactly.
Yeah. It was okay. Transport, I think it's fine. I'm fine with that.
Demetrius asked if who controls Denver. Denver is controlled mostly by Democrats, but it may be a city that is officially nonpartisan when people run, but it is so heavily Democratic that Republicans really don't win on city council there. So even if it is nonpartisan, it's Democrats on the city council.
Yeah, I think at this point we have one person on Denver City Council is probably a registered Republican, just by the way he votes. But the rest of them, I'm pretty darn sure, are Democrats.
More updates from what's going on in your state with ICE. I know that there's been a surge in a lot of places across the country. They're just being quieter about it this time.
They're ramping up in Oklahoma. We thought it was going to be coming because we heard Mark Wayne Mullins say that he's going to make an example out of here, and we heard Tom Hummon talk about more bloodshed. But today they've been all over I-35 and I-40. I've seen a lot of videos. They've been in Tulsa. They took a roofing crew. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I'm glad we got all the whistles, Tiffany.
Yeah, I'm glad he did too. And we've been, a lot of organizations here have been doing hard work to get whistle kits out to the community. There's an update from Santa Fe, New Mexico. After months of prep to hold them back, ICE has arrived. Marked very big increase in abductions over the past 3 weeks. Unmarked private vehicles, it's questionable whether they had legit warrants. I'm willing to bet they didn't. And I was observing a court hearing the other day where DHS was trying to say that the person led police or ICE on a high-speed chase. But what actually happened is they were in an unmarked vehicle and tried to run him off the road. So he drove to his home 4 miles away. So definitely not a high-speed chase. And luckily, the judge ruled that he could be allowed out on bond. But a lot of the time, the judges are not that nice.
Yeah, the guy in Oklahoma City today got saved by an actual Oklahoma City cop. He pulled up on the scene and put him in his car. That was pretty amazing.
Damn,
And
that's cool.
and the guy he put him in handcuffs and put him in his car and said, "Listen, as soon as they leave, you're out. You're gone."
Good. Good. That's one of the main reasons that we've always tried to maintain. What I was saying is that the reason that Solidarity Warriors is always trying to maintain a reasonably good relationship with the police by permitting events and marches and things is that we saw in Minnesota how the police were the ones protecting protesters when ICE showed up.
Also, that's one of the pillars of support, right? Law enforcement is a big thing that's propping up the administration. And if we can pit local law enforcement against ICE, that works to our benefit. So, these are the types of things that we want to be doing and encouraging.
Also, keep an eye out for ballot initiative 95. The number is probably going to be changing by the time it's on the ballot, but it is an initiative that would require Colorado police to work with ICE, which is currently illegal.
There's one more thing I just want to throw out there. Tiffany gave a lot of numbers about how much money these companies are making. The money that they're making is costing taxpayers. It's coming from the government. The government is paying that money. And I just want to remind everybody, the government says that Doge saved $215 billion. In reality, people are seeing 1.4 billion, maybe 32.7 billion. So all of the savings that came from government efficiency are being completely thrown out, and it's costing so much more than where we started before any of that.
Hey, Hey, Morgan, I think that Colorado is one of the states, I know Oklahoma is, where any individual can make a subpoena a federal grand jury about Doge. Now, I'm talking to the ACLU here, and they said that they can't do it here because it would mess with their current cases. But any individual can subpoena a grand jury with 5,000 votes, or excuse me, 5,000 signatures. So that's something we should talk about because this asshole stole all of our social security information, everything from the DOD, and we know exactly where he put it. He put it into his AI program, right? Like he ran out of information to scrape. So the only thing left was government data. So we need to get on this. This is something that everybody should be paying attention to. We've lost hundreds of thousands of federal employees, experience, expertise. All of the Middle East people are gone. Everybody, this is something we need to do.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's work on organizing that and let's work on not forgetting what Doge did. One of the things they did was they essentially shuttered USAID, which means millions of people are dying.
Yeah, and I heard that
And
we know for sure 800,000 people have died across the world, but our estimates are 4 million people in the next 4 years.
wow.
That number sounds small to me.
Yeah.
And, I love the ACLU, but we already know that here they are overtaxed beyond their capacity to handle. Like there was somebody here who was chalking the sidewalk for one of the No Kings protests, and she got arrested, and she got accused of vandalism. Um, I mean, chalk is one of the least vandalism things that there is. Uh, but the ACLU wasn't able to take her case because they don't have enough resources and they need something, I guess, more substantial than that. So I think as good work as they do, they may be spread a little thin.
No, absolutely. That's why we have to learn how to do these ourselves. I know friends who do this. We just need to learn how to do it ourselves.
Awesome. In case anyone does need legal assistance, I just put the website for Del Pueblo Law in the chat. They have represented a lot of protesters, including one of our friends. Well, they didn't, I don't think they ended up representing the person in Walsenburg, but they definitely helped her out with some information.